Thank you much for being here. My name is Keith Coney. I'm the Executive Director of Curriculum Instruction for Lakota Local Schools. And this is our grade level specific information session about the virtual learning option for our students. We greatly appreciate you being here and participating, taking time out of your busy schedule to be a part of this. We have a couple of other folks on our team who are joining me. So Krista Heidenreich is the Director of Digital and Professional Learning in our district and is also taking on the responsibility of leading the VLO from this point forward, which we're excited about. We also have Christina French, who is the Director of Elementary Curriculum Instruction for the district, and she and her team have done a fantastic job of building out the curriculum and the resources that we've got. I'll give each of them a chance to introduce themselves here. Chris is joining us. They're both joining us virtually, and Christine is actually joining us from the car, dropping her early childhood school daughters off. And we're always on here to support our families in Lakota. So Christy, you want to jump in?
Sure, thank you. So some of you, hopefully all of you, saw my welcome in the bulletin that was sent out. I am a early childhood person by heart, but let's keep that between this group so that the 3 through 12 folks don't get offended. No, I actually taught first grade for 11 years, and then part of my administrative experience in Lakota was at the early childhood buildings. I was at Wyandotte and Liberty. So very excited to meet our new friends in the virtual learning option. I also, as Keith said, my role as Director of Digital and Professional Learning have allowed me to have a great deal of experience and leadership in the online instructional tools that we'll be using. So Seesaw, training teachers, building capacity with the ability to have students interacting online. So really excited to see all of this come to life. And again, really excited to be back with some early childhood friends.
Christina, you have a chance to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having us tonight, and thanks for being here. As Keith said, I am the Director of Elementary Curriculum and Instruction for Lakota. Prior to this, I was a building principal and a first grade teacher also, so you have a very strong collective team of early childhood folks with you tonight. And I'm really just here today to answer your questions about the specific curriculum that your child will be taking part in and what that instruction might look like. And also, I am a parent of 2 VLOers. I have second graders at Wyandotte that'll be partaking in the VLO. So I'm excited to see it from the parent end as well. And I think that will definitely help make the whole situation better for everyone as we work through this together. So I'm excited to work with all of you as well.
Awesome. Thank you both for being here. So some other thanks to pass out. So thanks to all the parents for their support. We know this is not easy times for anybody, and there's a lot of challenges that come with trying to make decisions for our kids. And so we appreciate you taking the time this evening. Thanks also to Mr. Miller, the Board of Education, for supporting this vision and whatever we can do to help our families out. What we wanted to do was, we know that many of you have attended other information sessions that we've had prior to this, and there were a lot of specific questions that have come in. We've had a ton of information coming in and questions coming into VLO@lakotaonline.com. And we felt it was important to get to this next level of doing like a grade band level information session. So we meet your needs, talk about early childhood, so we don't have high school parents sitting here rolling their eyes or whatever when we talk about classroom materials or whatever else. So we're excited to be able to do this. A couple pieces of information: please keep checking the FAQs that are on our website. We will take information from here. We will update those. We're constantly updating those as much as possible. As we go through this, we also want to realize that, you know, in the last 4 weeks since we started these information sessions in general, this has gone from a few hundred students who were interested in this to over 3,500 students across K-12. That's larger than many area school districts. It is a large endeavor to put together. We are incredibly excited about this, but we know there are a ton of moving pieces. We want to make sure that we have as much communication for you as possible. We also know that building out the size and scale of this has some benefits to us to be able to do this well, but it also adds some, added challenges for us. So we appreciate your patience as we go through this. We'll continue to ask for your grace as we go forward to try and meet everybody's needs. And remember, as we go through this also, this is a virtual learning option. It is not perfected at this point. We have a ton of smart people who are working on this. It is not an absolute replication for what happens in school, and we understand that. We think there are some great things that happen in virtual learning, but we also know that it's not always going to look the exact same. We're excited to have this information for you tonight. We'll continue to keep reaching out to people as we go through this whole process. Some logistics for tonight's meeting. This is a Zoom webinar. Everybody is muted while this is going on. We will have the chat open. It is currently functioning. If you have questions, we'll be following those. We'll grab those at the end. All we ask is that since it is a chat and it's open to everybody, please be respectful about that. If there are individual questions or you have disagreements or concerns, please contact us individually and we'll be happy to go through that with you. It is being recorded. It'll be put on the website tomorrow, just like all the other info sessions that we've had in the past. There's no handouts or documents. Our goal is to talk for maybe a half hour or so, give you some information, and then be able to turn this around for some questions. We'll gather all the most popular Q&A questions that are down there. A couple of vocabulary pieces to remember before we get into this. We will talk about it as the VLO, the virtual learning option. Virtual is different in our mind than remote. So what we went through in the spring was remote learning, where every teacher kind of turned on a dime and tried to meet the needs of their kids the best they could in that session. What we heard from the spring was, if we have to continue this, please consider a virtual option for our families, and please build that out as robust as possible. And so our virtual option is that. It is a virtual school, kids attending from home. The expectation is a long-term commitment. And as we talk about that long-term commitment, I don't think I have this elsewhere. In the past, we have talked about a trimester or a semester commitment along the way. What we have found with all of the way that we're structuring our in-person and everything else, that we are really looking at more of a semester or a through the first of the year commitment to this for ECS. So much of our work is done in halves of years, and our specials are kind of organized that way, that we are going to try and honor a semester commitment to this. Obviously, there are specific situations that come up. We'll talk about those on a case-by-case basis. We will talk a little bit about synchronous versus asynchronous. That's sort of edu-speak, and we're trying to avoid as much of that as possible. But when we talk, you'll see that verbiage come up in virtual learning information. Synchronous is just real time. It is like school. It's real time with people communicating, teachers communicating with kids as it's happening. Asynchronous is on demand, on their own time. Might be opposite of when things are happening. It might be in the evenings or whatever else. So if you have other questions that come up, let us know. Our goal tonight is not to get in the absolute weeds with everything, give you enough information to feel comfortable about what's going on, and then we'll move forward. Program for tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to have general information specific to this grade band. We'll talk about some frequently asked questions that have come up. We'll answer questions and try and get everybody out of here in time for dinner, probably by 6 o'clock if we can do that. Anything that's not addressed here, please feel free to contact us at VLO@lakotaonline.com. We're getting lots of good information that's coming in. We're trying to turn that around as quickly as possible. We're growing a little bit of a team of people who are handling that. So let's talk about like your most pressing needs, what's going on right away that you need to know about. I've heard some information from other families who have come in, so I've got some information uploaded at the beginning. So where are we in the VLO, especially for early childhood students? Our enrollment, we have about 250 kindergartners, about 310 first graders, about 340 second graders. That aligns pretty well with the sizes of those classes, to be perfectly honest. The second grade is a larger group of students coming through. And our breakdown by building level is about approximate to what it is in person anyway. So our larger ECS buildings, Wyandotte and Hopewell, have more than in their VLO than smaller schools, maybe at Liberty. So the numbers are pretty good. What that's also done for us is it's given us some size and scale to be able to build out so it looks more like school. When we first had information sessions, we weren't sure how many students we'd have and what it would look like. Now we know that we have at least one, sometimes multiple sections per school building, per grade level. So what that gives us is we might have 6 or 7 or 8 kindergarten teachers across the district who are all teaching VLO. They may or may not be in their school building or in their classroom. So that's a wide variety, but we now have a team of kindergarten teachers who we can work with, we can collaborate with, they can share best ideas, share lesson ideas, which is just fantastic. All of our teachers have been identified. And as you know, if you have older children who have come through the district, this is a tricky time right now. We're trying to match up the class sizes with the number of teachers we've got. And that's only exacerbated right now because of VLO. We know that. But we will have our first session with all of our teachers on Friday. So Krista is leading all of our professional development with our teachers. We are meeting with all of them on Friday to kind of orient them to what virtual learning looks like, to be able to spend time with them about how to structure their classroom, how to structure their learning for their students, what the first week of school looks like. We'll work all the way through with them as we go through that process. Teachers have asked about, like, when do I find my teacher and when that is. That will be the later part of next week. One of the reasons that we've pushed back the first day of school is to make sure that we're in a good spot. With this much movement that's going on across the district, it's important for us to make sure that we get all the details right. And so we've pushed back that a little bit. So you'll find out teacher placements and what that looks like later part of next week, Wednesday, Thursday of next week. Enrollment continues to grow. We are doing everything we can to be as responsive to this. It's obviously a big challenge, but we don't ever want to provide a situation where a student is forced to go into school if they're not comfortable or healthy enough to be able to go there. Some parents have asked about class sizes. We've done our best to manage class sizes across the district, knowing that parents would prefer to have their child with other students from their school, which we've tried to do, or with teachers from their school. We also know that that might fluctuate some class sizes. We'll adjust those as much as possible. Virtual class sizes in virtual schools are typically a little bit larger than they are in person. We've tried to stay around the 30 to 35 student range. Kindergarten, obviously a little bit less than that because there's more one-on-one instruction that's needed. In any classrooms that get larger, we'll support that with other help. That, again, that looks different in a virtual environment than it does in person. If there's specific questions you've got about that, please reach out to us separately. So our online courses. So our online courses have been developed by our teachers, for our teachers. It is aligned to our curriculum. It is aligned to the state standards. The process for that, some people have asked, like, let me just see what my kids are going to be in and learning from all the time. That's hard to do right now. To be perfectly honest, we're in the process of finalizing that information so it can be presented to parents. And we just can't get you like access to those courses right now. Christina and her team have done just an unbelievable job of matching that up. So there's activities and lessons and assessments and all of that that's all built in. When we talk about the day in the life, I'll let Christina talk a little bit more about, like, what does that look like? How's the course structured? And what do I need to be able to do as a parent on my end? We have a lot of those questions come in, like, how long do they have to be online? Are they in front of a computer all day? Will I have paper materials? We'll answer all of those as we go through this process. Questions have come in about supplies. Let me address that one up front. So there is a K-6 supply list. So we've decided as a district to supply basic school supplies for all of our students. And those supply lists are the same for VLO students as they are for in-person. And we are coordinating a pickup of those for all of our VLO students at their building of attendance. And that information will be communicated out by your building of attendance and by us. An important thing to think about here is early on in this process, VLO was like this separate entity and students would be here and there'd be a whole team of VLO teachers here. We've gotten to the size where we are now just sections within our buildings. And so the nice thing for us is that allows families to be connected to the building and be connected to VLO at the same time. And so you'll get communication from your home building about events that are going on. You'll hear from your principal. You'll know when they have activities so your students feel connected back to their home school, especially for, imagine our second graders who have been there for a couple of years, and this has got to be sometimes traumatic for them to be not with their friends. We know how important that is. But we also are communicating on our end about what's going on in the VLO. And this is one of those things about supplies that will make sure that you hear communication from your building and from us at the same time. In addition to that, so teachers will also be putting together some materials that will help you in help your children learning at home. So more information is going to be coming out about that, but we'll have suggestions for, we'll have kits of materials to be sent home to you to be able to use, and we'll also have suggestions for things that you can use around your house to help your child engage in a lot of the learning activities that are going on. There's more information to come out about that. Some questions have come in about attendance. Attendance is obviously very important, but it looks different in a virtual environment. In VLO, it's based on logging into our system. So teachers will know that kids are attending or participating by whether they're logging in regularly to some of the learning activities. Then the teacher knows, they're tracking that throughout the week. They'll contact our administration to make sure that we know who has been attending all week. We'll talk a little bit more about this, but we know that some families might have a different schedule at home, or they might have working parents and there might be somebody else watching the child during the day, and they can't be on every single session during the day and might have to follow up with some of that stuff at night. And we're comfortable with that. We'll work those out with the teacher, but we know that some of those things will happen a little bit differently. That engagement will happen through Zoom sessions, engaging directly with teachers via email or chats that are going on. It might be Zoom sessions, small group sessions that are happening, and we'll know if kids are participating in class. If your child is sick, some people have said, like, what happens, do I have a sick day in virtual school? Well, yes, you do. Like, you don't have to be on all the time if your child is sick. Now, if they have a little bit of a cold and they still want to participate, that's great. They wouldn't be able to otherwise in school. But if they're not able to participate, we'll have an attendance line. You call them in. We know that they're not participating. The teacher will be alerted to that, so we know that that's not an issue. But some of that flexibility is nice to be able to have. If a child can get some work done while they're not feeling well at home. Questions have come in about the staggered start. So as a district, we've taken the 17th, 18th, 19th, and 20th as a staggered start to come in. Some parents have said, do I have to come into school for that staggered start? And that's not the idea at all. Our VLO students are not expected to come into school at all. But those staggered start days, letters A through L will log in or attend on Monday and Wednesday, and letters M through Z will attend on Tuesday, Thursday. There's no expectation of logging in for those kids or doing schoolwork on those opposite days. It's a smaller group for our teachers to be able to understand what this looks like for those students, to connect with families, to practice what whole group instruction looks like, to practice what small group instruction looks like, practice Zoom calls. All of those things will happen those first days. And to be honest, it's going to take us a good couple of weeks. You know, if you've ever been in a kindergarten or first grade class, there is a lot of just socializing into what school looks like that will happen in a virtual environment also. It will take a good amount of time for our kids to learn how school functions like this, but we're there and prepared and supported to be able to help them all the way along. That first week is also important to get the workspace organized. Krista put out a great video of how to organize that workspace at home, what that looks like. I do think one was even Christina's dining room table was set up as one of those, as a workspace in one of those videos. But we're here to help along the way to make sure that you're supported, taking care of your child all the way through. How much time will they have to be online at the same time? Some of that is dependent on your situation or your teacher situation, but our goal is not to have students online really for more than an hour, hour and a half or so a day. Any more than that is really excessive. A lot of times it might just be a half-hour session with a teacher, and then you've got offline activities that you're working on. Christine will talk a little bit about that when we get to a day in the life also. And we know that we've talked to families who have unique situations, working families, whatever, and their school day might need to look a little bit different. Some questions have come in about, when do I talk to my principal? When do I talk to VLO? At the school, we still have counselors who are still connected to your child. Social emotional concerns, your child's not connecting with kids, or you have concerns about them, please contact your counselor. If you have questions about their schedule or testing that might come up, any support for ESL or reading intervention, IEP or 504 support would all be directed through the school. We will be in communication with them all the time through the VLO, but that direct contact and support will come through the building. Any academic progress concerns would happen through the building also. So if your child is really struggling, or if there's something comes up that we know about that we might need to have a meeting about, your school, your building's school of residence would then facilitate some of those meetings that would happen. And what happens on the VLO side, we obviously take care of attendance, we take care of progress in your class. Your child's teacher is the point of contact for everything. If they're not doing well, if they're struggling, if you're not having any success in challenging your student or meeting their needs, all of that happens through us, and we'll support that as it goes all the way through. When we talk about devices, I know there's a question that just came up about laptops here. So there is an expectation that that there is a device at home for each student, or they have access to a device. It might be a shared device that they work with other kids. I'll ask Krista to talk a little bit about that. Part of her role as Director of Digital Learning for our district is to be very connected to the tech team. She can help us with a little bit of the questions about what kind of device are we talking about.
Yes, okay. So we have had some questions about the appropriate device for your early childhood learner. Seesaw is the online program that we'll be using to deliver the curriculum and have your early childhood student engaging in that curriculum. And Seesaw works on any type of device. So the only thing that we ask is that it's running the latest operating system. And as far as how many devices should I have, will each child need a device? Does it need a touch screen? What are the bells and whistles that it needs? That is honestly the family's preference. Students will be interacting with Seesaw using their fingers, just like they had iPads at school that they did that on. But now they actually, as we're pushing devices down, they're using a Chromebook for that. So again, it works on any device. However, it's really about your budget and your needs for your families. So if you have a preference and you'd like to add some of those additional features onto your device, that's completely your choice. But a student does not have to have a touch screen to be able to engage with Seesaw. They can use a mouse or the touchpad. So it's really up to the families. But yes, we are expecting that the device is provided from the home. Also, the support for your device will need to come from them. We'll help you with Seesaw, but just have to make sure that it fits your family, both budget, time-wise. I know there was a question here with, I have multiple children. That really depends on what their learning schedule looks like. So if you develop a learning schedule that allows you to be able to rotate and support them at different times as individuals, you might be fine with 1 or 2 devices. But if you have multiple children and you want everyone to be on at the same time for your schedule, then you might want to think about what that looks like. So if you have any other questions, put them in the chat, but I really feel like any device will work with Seesaw. And again, it's really the family's preference and budget that determines which device you go with.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I was going through the chat while Chris was speaking. It does look like that there are a lot of questions about that, and several of the questions in the chat we'll get to throughout this presentation, and then we'll make sure that we follow up afterward to get to specific questions that have come up. A little bit about the timing of work and multiple devices. I think we will. We're going to need some input from families, to be honest, at the beginning of this. We'll work to coordinate that as much as possible, especially across grade band levels. But do I need multiple devices to be able to do this work? If I have multiple kids, can they really share? Is everything going to happen between 8 and 10 in the morning, and then we're kind of stuck scrambling around? We'll do our best to work through that. And we'll need, obviously, feedback from families along the way. Some questions about availability for teachers and how do we get questions answered. We are working with our teachers in terms of their professional development and how to be a responsive virtual teacher, and having consistent times for families to be able to reach out and ask questions. So I think those are a couple of things. So especially with our earliest learners, sometimes those come from students, sometimes those come from parents also. And so each teacher, your child's teacher, will present to you sort of their schedule for the week, when are times that are most available. How do you get questions answered? Is that, are those small group times the best time for that, or is it one-on-one? You'll get plenty of information that's specific to your child's needs at that grade level, but know that that's something that's really important to us is providing clear, consistent feedback and times for you to get questions answered and for your students to get questions answered. We talked about how much time kids will be online. I had a few parents send me specific things ahead of this they want to make sure that we addressed, so I appreciate that. There's another one that's about physical books as opposed to everything virtual, and the kits that we have will have some books included in them, but also we'll have, and I'll let Christina talk about this in a second, that we'll have opportunities for you to use home libraries or whatever else for extended reading opportunities within school. So let's talk a little bit about the day in the life of and the learning experience. We've talked a little bit about the learning partnership that we have. The learning partnership is really, us and your teacher and the parents being equal partners in this and providing support. And the teacher is doing the virtual instruction, but the parents providing the structure for the child at home, the supervision of the learning, and follow up and support, and a little bit of that feedback. You're gonna be seeing, hey, I didn't see them really implementing this or really learning this. It seemed like they were nodding their head during that instruction, and then when I did it with them individually, they didn't have any idea. You're obviously gonna help us through that whole process. When we talk about like, what does the day look like and how is the curriculum designed, I think that's, they really go hand in hand. And so I'll ask Christina to talk a little bit about how it was designed and then what that looks like for a parent.
Sure. So as Keith stated in the beginning, our curriculum that we're providing to our virtual learning students is created by Lakota teachers, and it's directly aligned to what learning is happening in the classroom. So we're on the same pacing schedules, and the students will be learning the same things that are happening in the classroom, just virtually. So what that will look like on your end as the parent is you will have lessons sent out to you daily in math, English language arts, science, and social studies via Seesaw. You also will have lessons from our specialist teachers that are built into that curriculum as well. So you'll have your 4 core subject areas each day, and then you will also have some specials built in and also some brain breaks for the kids built in directly into the lessons. So when you see a lesson come your way, those lessons are really following the same format each day. So it'll look familiar every time you open up the lessons for the day. You'll know exactly what to expect. There'll be a review of material. There'll be a statement of purpose. So what is it that your child is supposed to be learning through this lesson? There'll be a direct instruction of some sort, whether that be a presentation from the teacher built into the lesson, or it might be a video that they've pre-recorded and put into the lesson with a follow-up assignment or an assessment. So as Keith said, as far as timing, you're looking at about 2.5 hours a day of instruction, and that's mixed between online and offline. So sometimes those activities might be complete this online assignment and submit it via Seesaw, but other times it might be take a scavenger hunt around your house and search for things that come in even pairs or something like that, where the kids are away from the screen doing an activity that goes right along with the objectives of that lesson. You also will have small group sessions in person with your virtual learning teacher. So those will be for enrichment or intervention tied to the lesson, or it might just be additional instruction. So some of our standards are much harder for students to learn than others and might require an online session with those teachers. So those will be scheduled each week as well. I saw a lot of questions in the chat about those lessons specifically. Will they be the same time each day? How will they be scheduled? How long will they be? That's really something that you're going to coordinate with your virtual learning teacher. So once the teacher puts together the class and has an opportunity to meet all of your children and really assess their needs, that will determine when those Zoom sessions take place for each of the kids. And really, those Zoom sessions are the only time throughout the day that would be required for your child to be on a schedule to be there. The rest of the learning can take place at your leisure. So I also saw a question in the chat about the schedule that was shared a couple of weeks ago, which was just an example. So you may want to spread these lessons out throughout the day. You may want to do them in the evening. You may want to do them first thing in the morning. Whatever works for your schedule is how you will complete those lessons. The only scheduled times would be those Zoom sessions with your teachers, and you would work those times out with them. I also saw a question in there about multiple platforms being used. So Seesaw is the main platform every day that you will receive your lessons on. So again, those math, ELA, science, and social studies lessons will be dropped to you via Seesaw. But there will also be other platforms for practice that your child might engage in. So Raz Kids is a platform that we use for reading. So there's lots of leveled books on there that kids can read and take quizzes and read aloud to their teacher. We also have Dreambox, which is a math program for extra practice, and a couple of other programs that you might see dropped in there to help enhance the lessons that your children are receiving via Seesaw. I think that's all we have as far as the day in a life, and I think I tried to cover most of the questions in the chat. If I see any more pop up, I'm happy to answer those or pop back in at any time.
Great. Thank you, Christina. And I was, again, scrolling through the chat as she was going through that, and there are some other questions that come up that we will address in the next little bit here. And then we'll make sure that we go through and hit all of those at the end if there are any that we've missed. We've talked about the technology here. I do think the next slide is the daily schedule. I believe that is next. I don't have access to, there we go. And so as Christina mentioned, this sample schedule is just that. It is not anything that we have aligned all of our curriculum to. These are samples for families to be able to use to say, here's how we're going to structure our day. We know that a variety of work in the morning is going to be good. We know that free time and play is important to build in there. It is not saying that teachers are available until 6:30 or so on the schedule on the right. It is simply saying that if that time works out better for your family, then that is a way that you can structure that. The question comes in about like Zoom sessions that are real time. Do I have to be there for that? What if my child is not there? Can that be flexible at all? And I really think that's going to come down to that individual classroom selection to say, this is the right time for this. Those will all be recorded. If there's individual flexibility we need to work in for an individual family, that's better handled at the classroom level than for us to try and dictate that from the district. These are simply schedules for you to be able to think of, how do I structure my student's day? It's about the right amount of learning that they'll have take place. So I know we've got some feedback on that. I do want to keep those in there just so that we continue to support families who are thinking, how do I help support my child going through this? The next piece I wanted to jump into was our kind of the timeline. What's this look like for the next week or so, 2 weeks or so? So next week, the week of the 10th, what does this look like? So we're going to spend all of our time getting parents oriented, getting teachers oriented, putting schedules together. Our teachers will be creating a Meet the Teacher video to introduce themselves to everybody. It is personable. It is about who they are. It is not like curriculum night and everything you're going to find, but just who they are as a person, what to expect. That week and into the week of the 17th, our teachers will start to make individual parent contact to know what is going on with families. So they'll get to know you individually. There's a question in the chat about, will I get to meet my child's teacher before the first day of school? And that's really the end of that week of the 10th and then through that staggered start. That's a lot of what they'll be spending their time with, is individual parent communication. So you'll expect to hear from your child's teacher before the first day of school. We'll also be doing a lot of teacher training and PD that week. The week of the 17th is that staggered start, getting our kids in front of the computer, getting our kids in front of the supplies they've got, the materials they've got, getting oriented to what that looks like. You will also get a parent feedback survey from us that Wednesday, the 19th. And what that will be is a chance for you to give us your honest feedback. How did this go? What worked well? What did not go well? Was it a technical issue? Was it a timing issue? I need to see more of this or understand that. Again, this is our first time going through this. We've got a lot of great designs put into this, but you also have to help us through that whole process as well. The week of the 24th is the first week of school. Academics begin. There may be a curriculum night that week or the week next that is an evening or an afternoon time for you to really dig into that with your teacher. We also understand when we say academics begin, there is a lot of just getting used to this sort of learning that our students are going to have to go through. And so it might take a good, like we said, 2 or 3 weeks of us orienting them and a lot of communication and conversations with you and your teacher to make sure that you are in a good spot. So that's kind of what our timeline looks like for the next couple of weeks. As we go forward, a big piece of this also is us being on the same page and us being in this together. Our hashtag for the upcoming year is We Can Lakota, and we really believe that. Like our whole emphasis through this whole process is how do we meet the needs of our kids, and we can't do that if we do that on our own. So we are going to have we want parent support teams. I can imagine something that's like a VLO PTO of all of our families who come together, and it might be by building, it might be by the whole grade band level to be able to support everything that's going on. We'll continue with communication on a weekly, bi-weekly basis. So you'll see from us on Tuesdays and Fridays for the next few weeks just to get information out to you. I know a lot of families are a part of a Facebook group or information that's out there. We would love to partner with you and bring that on board and say, how do you become the voice for us, give us critical feedback that we need, get information out, make sure that we're meeting the needs of our students. We've also heard from parents who have said, we'd love to be able to have, if it's appropriate, outings to different places, educational field trips and things that we'll organize and collect. And if we can have parents kind of helping with that, that would be fantastic. So if that's something you're interested in and you want to communicate that to us, send us an email at vlo@lakotaonline.com. That's fantastic. We are on Twitter. As of this morning, at Lakota Virtual is on Twitter. We'll be sharing out information as much as possible. Please give us a follow. We'll tag a lot of things with Lakota Virtual or go with the VLO, which is kind of our motto right now, to keep things going as much as possible. Some other ways that we are connected to or supporting all of our kids. Some questions came up before about counselors or social emotional support or 504s or ESL. All of that continues to run through the building. You still have the same connection, the same point of contact at the physical school building who will be making that connection for all those students. So if your child is on a 504, that plan still exists. Those teachers who are in the VLO will still be implementing that with the same accommodations. Some of those accommodations might not make any sense in a virtual environment. There is no preferential seating, or we're not going to manage preferential seating in a certain place, or extended deadlines we can manage in a different sort of way. So any of those plans would be managed through the building level. Any of the supports that you would have, whether they are reading supports or speech and language supports, those would still exist. To be perfectly honest, we're working through the logistics of what that looks like. We've been in constant communication with our student services and special services teams to make sure they have helped us design our curriculum and provide the supports in place that we need. If your child is on an IEP or is in the process of going through that IEP identification, you'll be contacted by the week of the 17th to set up a meeting to determine what those services look like. And those are a lot of meetings for us to have in a very short time period. The purpose of the meeting is to discuss your child's needs, the VLO program, and the plan for at least this first semester. The team will review the current IEP and determine to what extent it can be implemented in the virtual setting. If it cannot, then we develop a VLO specific plan, and that team will go through that with you all the way. It might not be something that is on front of mind for everybody, but know that we've had a lot of conversations about that. If you have specific questions, please contact your point of contact at your building for your child's IEP. That being said, what I would like to do, I think that's all the prepared information we've got, and we hit it at about 40 minutes. Will give us some time to answer any questions. And Krista, help me out here. Is there a place where those are, or are those just through the chat?
So they are in the chat, but in our Google Doc, there were some similar questions, so I tried to make you some hot topic. You addressed some of the things on IEPs. I think there were some questions about getting lessons weekly, like how the lessons will come out from the teachers. Christina addressed the schedule. Printing materials was one, and I believe some of the questions were about handwriting as well, and I think Christina, chime in if you have something to add, but I feel like we said this in the Day in a Life video, you may want to print things for your child. They may want to do some things on print. Even if you just have paper available, it is really important at the early childhood that they're putting pen to paper. And that's why we said we try to build in activities that allow for that offline practice and allow them to have some opportunity to write something or to practice. So feel free that if there are things that you feel like you would want to print for your child, or you find things that's absolutely your choice to do. We try to build everything so that it's online. However, like I said, you may want to have paper and pencil because they do like to write and they should write. So practicing that. As far as the lesson plans, the students will see what lessons, they will have a progression that they'll be able to see in Seesaw that shows their lessons so that you can plan your schedule accordingly. We have the device. If you need assistance with the device, please reach out to your building administrator and they can work with you on that. The semester exit, Christina, I might let you take that one. They're asking about trimester versus semester exit. They thought one of the questions that I thought my student was going to be able to switch in November. So that was one that we just have addressed.
And I can jump in on that one too, because I think that's been sort of a district communication. For ease of a lot of the systems we have in place and when kids would transition easily back into school, a lot of that happens more easily at the semester, especially the way that we're organizing all our specials and some other supports. We understand that's a change in the middle of the game. If there are families who have banked everything on that, or that's the reason they're doing anything, or I'm not doing this VLO thing, if I can't get out in November, we will work with families along the way. It just made a lot of sense for us to align a lot of our supports to the semester date rather than the trimester date. Hopefully that answers that question. I know that's a difference from what we had originally kind of stated there.
Yeah, and as far as communication is concerned, your teacher will share their primary method of communication with you, how they're going to be updating you on things that are happening in the VLO classroom. You will also continue to get the VLO bulletin from my team. So we're going to be doing Tuesdays and Fridays for the next couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks, and then we'll assess the situation and see if we feel like it's still necessary to send information that often, or if we want to pull back and just make them once a week, weekly. You will also, as Keith mentioned in the beginning, one of our goals is to keep students as connected to their building of residence as possible. So you're also going to be receiving communications from your building of residence. And I think Keith did a good job explaining that and saying that you can look at what's happening in the building and see what pieces of that you want your child to participate in. There was a question about extracurricular activities. And yes, the students are able to participate in extracurricular activities that are happening in their building.
There's a question here about testing. What does testing look like? And to be perfectly honest, we do not have a lot of clear guidance on testing right now. Our goal is to get some baseline test assessments done of students. We're working through the details on that. Many of you're probably familiar with the fact that we use MAP extensively in the district, and there is a way to do remote MAP testing. We're not entirely comfortable with the way that is yet, so there's probably more to come on that. But any assessments that will be done on the individual student or teacher level early on in the school year. More information to come. I think, Christine, I'm saying that correctly? Okay. Thumbs up. That's good.
I'll chime in real quick on communication with teacher and the expectation. So as Keith said earlier, everyone's going to have their own spin on their learning schedule as individual families. So our expectation of our teachers is that they are regularly checking email throughout the typical workday. And a lot of our teachers will be checking their email even outside of that typical workday. However, we ask that they respond to you at their earliest convenience, but no more than a 24-hour span. If there is a question that has to do with curriculum or something your child's learning and they're stuck and you don't know how to help them and you're waiting for a teacher, it's okay. Just press pause. Your teacher will get back with you, and then we can take it from there. So don't panic. The nice thing about the VLO is the flexibility, and teachers know that schedules are different and families have different things going on. Parents are working, and so there's a lot of flexibility there. So just keep that in mind. But we also know that if you're helping your student at 8:30 at night, the teacher may not respond right away.
There's a question in the chat about concern about hoping to have seen more information, what the courses look like. I want to see more about what this is. Lots of concern about whether we are prepared at this point. And I understand that, and I get that. It's not because we don't want to, it's simply because of all the work that's going on in the background to make sure that we are ready for the start of school. And if there are people who have those specific questions, please contact me offline. I'd be happy to try and set up something separate for you. It just in this kind of format was very difficult to pull together. So, and I get that. I understand the frustration with that. And if we can put together something that is a specific lesson, we'll try to get that together as much as possible and understand that concern. Let's go through the end of the chat. If there are any other questions in here that we can make sure that we address. Yearbooks has come up. I asked a question of LifeTouch about yearbooks today. We'll come up with some process. I know there are schools across the state who are LifeTouch schools and are doing virtual learning. So we'll make sure that we get that information out. I just don't know what that is at this point in time. Some questions about seeing lessons a week at a time, and that might be something we do later on in the year. We're going to stick to a day by day, just so we know that our pacing is right at the beginning, and we understand that for our teachers who are going through that process at the beginning.
I have a couple more questions on the text side. There was a question about
Sure.
Seesaw being a download. Yes, it is. But there are also, if you actually go to the Seesaw, I personally just Googled Seesaw device compatibility, but you can search Seesaw tech requirements, any of that. Just go to if you look on their site, someone else had a question about, they have an older operating system. They give you very specific information on what's compatible with their product. So that would be a great place to go if you have things that aren't operating on the latest system, or if you're not sure about. That's a great resource to check out. They've got a lot of great information there for parents.
Just checking through the last few of these. There were some questions about individual IEP meetings or IEP questions. I would contact your individual, either the teacher you worked with or your point of contact at the school. There may be a few days of instruction that would happen before the IEP meeting is in place. We're trying to narrow that down as much as possible, especially for our ECS students who may have specific learning needs.
Keith, there's a couple of questions in the chat about if the district were to switch from Plan A to Plan C, which is remote learning, what would happen to our virtual learners?
Okay. So that's part of the reason that we've talked about a long-term commitment of this. And so Plan C is the students who are in those regular classes and those teachers switching to remote learning, as we've done in the spring. That would be a short-term time period. It may or may not be, we hope that they would use the same materials that we have developed for the VLO, but not all of those teachers are designed or set up to be virtual teachers either. So if you are in the VLO, you would stay in the VLO. If you are in person, you would remain in person and would move to remote. But there is not really a switch back and forth between students in the VLO and students who would be in remote learning, if that helps. So it does seem like there is some questions in here about being able to see a day in the life or getting access to something. We've done some things similar to that, and maybe that's something we can try and put together for the first part of next week. That is just a glimpse into something we can share out. We'll do our best to be able to provide that. Question about materials being supplied, but tax-free weekend is coming up. Can we get the list of materials that parents should purchase to be ready for school? That is our plan, to be able to get those out. If we can try and put those together by the Friday bulletin, we can try and do that. Kindergarten pre-assessments. We found out from the state, we asked the question of the state on kindergarten readiness assessments, and they said they are still putting their plans together or details together. So we don't have any final information on kindergarten readiness assessments at this point. Login dates, details, sign up for Seesaw. We will have all of that information that comes out for all of our parents. Trying to scroll through and make sure I'm not boring anybody, but getting to all of these questions that are in here. There's a question again about the schedules. The schedules are samples. They are not choose a schedule and that's what you're on. They're just samples for how parents can help their kids support their online learning at home. And a question about reading assessments throughout the course of the year. We honestly need to get better guidance from the state of Ohio about what our leverage is, or our ability to use their assessments and our ability to use other reading assessments, map assessments, and we'll put that together. We'll have more information coming out about that. We have not gotten, honestly, a lot of guidance about that up to this point.
So Keith, I see a few questions around the Zoom sessions for teachers, and if you miss a Zoom session and things like that, there are actually built within the curriculum direct instruction videos. So if your child can't be on the Zoom call, there are supports. Those supports will be available. So even if your child is on the Zoom call and you start trying to apply the learning and maybe they're just having a little bit of trouble or not quite understanding, they can always use those direct instruction videos as additional resources to help them with the learning. But there are direct instruction videos for all the lessons.
All right. And it does look like I feel like we've answered most of the ones who are down here at the bottom in the chat. What we will do is we'll take this chat, we'll review it, we will add any of those questions to the FAQ. If there are any individual follow-up questions you've got, feel free to contact us separately. Again, our role is to be as responsive as we can to the needs that you've got. Keep pushing us in that direction. If there are other folks who have questions related to this, please follow up through email and we'll make sure that we're as responsive as possible. On behalf of Krista and Christina, we thank you all for being here. Take time out of your busy schedules to be here. We appreciate that. And we hope that you all have a fantastic evening. Thank you very much.
Yes. Have a nice evening.